Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Tuesday. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. A lot to get in. Hear plenty from Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Mitch will be with us here in about 15 minutes or so. In hour two, Rick Kaczenski, Steve Marik. Congratulations to Jazz Shelley and Alexis Markowski, second team All Big Ten. And how about Alexis Markowski, proud of Pius? Good for her, as she is the freshman of the year in the Big Ten. That is outstanding. That's incredible. We'll no doubt spend some time on that with Steve Marik. And numbers to get in today, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Email chris@hailvarsity.com. And always find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, Chris Schmidt. Connor Clark, can find him on Twitter. Give him a follow. Check out his podcast as well at Connor_, hold on a minute. C_Clark_27. I'm 9 for 10 on that.
Yo, I give you credit. It's definitely a mouthful when you have to say it. It looks much better on paper.
No, and you know what? Twitter's a nightmare trying to get the handle you want versus what's available. Because there's millions of Clarks, millions of Schmidts, and away you go. But, you know, I'm interested in the offense for Nebraska. It's all going to center around the development of the offensive line. That's obviously key, and that's going to be a work in progress. And I say that just because some of your key components won't be available to you, but you're going to go find some new engine parts, so to speak, with what Coach Raiola's tasked to do. You got the quarterback situation. And then you have the wide receiver group that, there's some special players in there. Can the special talents be brought out by Mickey Joseph? He has done that throughout his career. But to me, it kind of comes down to a change in mentality, first and foremost, on the offense. And a thought from you, Connor, with the offense. And,
come here, brother.
I know Mark Whipple spoke yesterday. We'll hear from him in a moment.
We're on call for you.
He's a guy that is no nonsense. He's pretty old
ESPN
school.
Lincoln
And this is how it's going to go. And
on iTunes.
He may not be real. And that's okay.
Varsity Radio.
I kind of tend to like grumpy people.
One final time, full slate of Big Ten action tonight. Husker basketball
about
tip off here.
You'll get
In a
done what
bid
he's
at
asking
Ohio
you to.
State, minus 15 and a
it
half
won't
the
be
number.
any
Be sure to
room
check the
for needing to
podcast page
translate. It'll
out.
be pretty black and
The
white
on-demand section,
as to what he's asking. But
ESPNLincoln.com.
What do you think about the offense here? I think you're going to have options at quarterback. I think you're going to have options at running back.
like football or
and you're
love
going to have
football.
options to throw the football.
That was kind of a theme
Comes
today
down to the
from Mickey
O-line,
Joseph.
but, you know, where do you think
We
it
heard some of
goes?
his comments
So this
from
is really
yesterday, Mark
step
Whipple
one
as well. And then
of
that,
the offense
that elevation
and its
of the
rebirth.
offense.
They've always put up yards.
Where that goes.
They've just
So,
not always
good,
put
some
up
good
points.
discussion.
And I think that's
in
going to be
hour one.
the
Coach
difference.
Kaczenski, Mitch
And
Sherman.
you had a big old target in Austin
Steve
Allen.
Mark.
It's going to go.
We're on the road tomorrow.
Hopefully,
we
crush
are
it.
going to be
in Indy.
posted up.
You're
for
missing
the
a guy in
district
Cam Jurgens
final between
that's
Pius
gonna be big
boys
and Felt.
and the
You'll
Papio
feel that
South
loss
squad.
initially,
That
but
is
you're gonna
a
have to
road
just kinda
show for
keep
us.
plowing
We were at
forward
Pius
if you're
Monday.
Nebraska football.
We'll be in
And
Papio South
you've
tomorrow.
got new eyes
Coach
and new
Jeff
voices
Smith going to be doing the game
in
with
a lot
me.
of the
I think that
offensive
tips
room.
at 6.
Well, I like what Whipple
I'll be in
is
stands,
saying
man,
about the
but,
offense
I
and
will
going through
have,
the presser here for our show today. We'll get to a
headset
couple
on
of
and
his
fully
cuts in a
clothed,
second,
unlike
but
Harry Carey.
I
There's
like
been a little bit of
his
Cubs
plan.
scene today,
It
too.
sounds like it's very
Every once a year,
individually
bless his
based
heart, would
based on player
go
per
out to the
player.
bleachers.
He's big on the film.
Get a suntan.
He's big on the guys in between spring and summer
Don't
ball.
know if any outfielders were
harmed on their reps
when Harry did his road show out in the bleachers with the sun
quarterback.
Through
Obviously, we had the whole thing about no one will ever know. He thinks Casey
Harry
Thompson
would wear.
is the number one guy right now. But he goes on to say, "Well, we don't know about that tomorrow." And he's big about getting
we'll see if Major League Baseball
reps.
More so
Same
the
thing with the
owners.
running backs, which I like a lot. And
you can be a baseball fan
and rusher is nice
/ annoyed.
But at the same time, if you have a running back room that you could go 2, 3, maybe even 4
but
deep
the owners
in the Big
really
Ten,
are.
I mean, he had success with 3 running backs out.
Always painted as the bad guy because they're the ones that control.
I think that's
the
only going to
strings.
improve this offense. But as you mentioned,
so
it really
we'll
all depends on how the offensive line
if cooler
plays
heads
this year.
prevail, or if a sport
quite honestly,
it's
a
luxury
continues
to not care. Enough trust and
might
develop
sneak a phone call in here.
To have
it'd be a sad summer
3-man rotation.
Major League Baseball.
You go back to the glory years of Nebraska football. You had your Lawrence or your Omaha.
That'll be pretty good.
We have
time. Let's get John in here. John, shot clock is on.
Dudes,
John, go ahead real quick, bud.
Hey, yeah, you bet. Hey, Smitty, I heard you talking about going to Kemper Arena for the Big 8 tournament back in the day.
Who you were
back in the day
for.
I got a great memory. Probably one of my favorite sports memories
guys
ever.
that had to wait their turn, which is good because it got them a chance to get ready and see and learn how to do it. But once they were called into duty, case in point, and Amon Green, with Lawrence's deal.
Remember that show?
Amon came in, ran 1,000 yards as a true freshman. He was good enough to play as a true freshman. He got coached up to be an elite back by Coach Solich, but he came in with a lot of
so you saw the
from high school.
You saw the old Goldie Hawn flick.
It's not normal, but it was kind of the norm for Nebraska.
Good for you,
of the way
making it a whole movie behind bless his soul. Wayman Tisdale at all 6'9" of it. Were you on any phone books?
And listen to Mark Whipple here.
No, but I
when it
needed
comes
one.
to
I was a little
needing
bit
a couple of running backs. He's a guy that
that was pretty good. Hey, John, thanks for the call.
He had a
Big
guy
8
like
memories, man.
He had a Bolitnikoff winner catching
Kemper
touchdowns
Arena.
and going for 1,800 yards.
Sprint Center's sweet, though.
You're going to make the opposing defense
Westport.
stop your best guy.
Used to have,
but you're not going to be one-dimensional and make
Big 12 happy hour.
An issue for
in
your
Westport.
offensive line if you're having to throw
you need to ask
because you're
Kranak about
behind.
Saturday sometime.
And that's the biggest difference
back,
to
tomorrow,
me
road show
with
from
Nebraska
Papio
football
South
moving
Pius.
forward here with
Talk to
new
you forward with
offensive
Varsity.
voices and new offensive minds. Are they going to be able to do what they want when they want offensively? 2, are they going to be able to do what they want when they have to? And that, to me, is running the football on 3rd and 3, or if you want to throw it for 4 on 3rd and 3, fine, but are you going to be able to execute it? To me, what you want to see is in Big Ten football, when push comes to shove, can you line up and go get 2.5, 3 yards when the whole stadium knows you're going to run it? The run game and getting a first down in short yardage has been what? It has been Adrian on a quarterback power. That was the trust. Now you got to find 2 or 3 backs, and maybe they're new names, maybe they're same names, to go get that done. And it's got to be the offensive line that fires off, and from a mentality. And I think that's fair. I think you're going to have that Raiola type mentality voiced, ingrained, drilled to do what these guys may be best at, and that's fire off the football, and that will bode well in the Big Ten, because I think they've recruited the talent. You've got to be able to bring that talent out. But here is Whipple on the running back room.
You need a couple 3. Same thing. It's a physical league. You know, you want to get 3 ready and possibly 4. So there could be third down guy that's really good in the throw game and good in protection. Could be a third down back, which a lot of times you use in the NFL, and I've used that. Last year we had a young freshman, and we didn't want to put a lot on his plate, but he was a good running back. We said he's going to finish games, get in the second quarter, and develop the guys as we go. It's a long season, so it's until we're not going to know our team really till probably, I would think, till after looking ahead in the Oklahoma game, or you go the first 6 to that point.
So, listen, that's your timeline. It's new for coaches, it's new for players, but you got to figure it out. Let's shift over to Mickey Joseph specifically here. We talked about that mentality, and this is Mickey here talking about, and we'll get into this with Coach Kaczenski in his stops in Iowa and in Lincoln, of course, getting the love out of football. Do you like or do you love what you do? You know, I hope all of you get to do what you love. Some of you tolerate what you do. I get it. And I've told that to Junior, man. Like, do you love baseball or do you like baseball? Well, if you love it, you're going to be putting in the extra time because you've not been blessed with Roberto Clemente's arm, Vince Coleman's speed, or Big Papi's power. All right? So you're going to have to put some extra work in and hope you hit it where they ain't. But the difference here with kids and the kids that Nebraska's looking for, or at least trying to kind of morph out of their personality, that like, that love, the difference in football.
When you love it, I used to say about this game, you got to be kind of a little crazy to want to play football and loving it. That means you're going to do the extra. That enough is never enough. Enough is never enough. You know, when a coach tells you good job, you work even harder. Coach tells you, hey, that's not a good job, you even double up what you got to do to get better. You know, they got to love the game. You're going to have to love the game to play for me. You're going to have to love the game to play for Scott. You're not going to be able to like it. Because when you like it, you're not going to play.
So there's your line of demarcation. If you just like it, good luck getting on the field. More from Mickey on that like and love concept.
One practice. But then I also got to look at it. Maybe he wasn't trained to love it. Maybe nobody ever challenged him to love it. So let me give him a chance. Maybe you like it's like a relationship. When you first meet your girlfriend or your boyfriend, you like them, but then you grow to love them. Okay, so now it's about me making sure that they're consistent, that they're doing stuff on and off the field, and they might like it right now. But then we can get him to love it. Now, if it gets to the point and you don't love it and it's June, I'm going to know. Then I got to move on.
So that was Mickey Joseph yesterday at the round table talking about that when do you figure out a kid either likes it or love it? And he says, I can tell just based off of that first practice. Last thought from Mickey here, and we'll get to some Major League Baseball news and more from Mickey Joseph later on in the show. But getting the kids to love it here. You identified yay or nay. Now, how do you get him to get into that extra gear?
If that's what it takes for him to love it, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be at their neck every 5 seconds. I'm going to be on them. I'm going to make sure, because especially if you know that they have the talent to do it, and it's in their heart to love it, they just don't know how to do it. So we ask them to do, hey, get better every day you come on the field. Get better. So my thing is looking at them, make sure they get better. Looking at the 707 today, and looking at the 707 when we come back Wednesday and see who got better. All the way through individual. See who's trying to get better, who's trying, giving us effort.
So pretty good stuff from Mickey Joseph. We'll hear in about 25 minutes kind of his take and update, some intriguing stuff we'll talk with Mitch Sherman about as well on Xavier Betts, because he's one of those guys, Connor, that, man, we're smiling if you're a Nebraska fan with the flashes, the glimpses you've seen of Betts. And between him and Omar, man, if you can get those guys to find consistency on top of the Trey Palmers of the world or the Alante Browns or the stable of receivers they have with the projected talent they have throwing them the football, assuming there's protection in time, then it could be a big wow factor for Nebraska.
Well, you mentioned there's so much potential and so much just raw talent in the wide receiver room. And you mentioned Alante Brown, too. That was a name that was brought up a couple of times in that roundtable discussion as well, about how he's really caught some eyes from the new offensive assistants, which is something that I like to hear. I think Alante Brown he's been here for, 2 years now and hasn't really gotten all that much of an opportunity, but maybe this is his chance as well, alongside Xavier Betts and Omar Manning, who we know can strike at any moment. We saw Xavier Betts strike like lightning a couple of times last year. We saw Omar Manning with a touchdown against Oklahoma and a couple of other big plays last year too. So the potential is there. How are they going to use it? And as you mentioned again, it's all about protection as well. Can we get them the football?
Well, I think when did they go to Omar against Michigan? 4th and 5 in the red zone, and it was a 26-yard gain. When did they go to bets? They're down a score, and they just send bets on a go route against Oklahoma 57 yards later. And when did you go to bets against Wisconsin when it came down to nut crunching time? And he got lit up and no flag was called. Somebody's not bitter or anything. If, going through some old emails and Twitter responses at the end of that Nebraska-Wisconsin game, and I get it, that should have been a flag, but those guys, they need to be consistent for coaches to call their number repeatedly. And they also want to be used appropriately, not on again, off again. Jeff Passan with ESPN, sad day for baseball. You have MLB PA. The players agreed unanimously not to accept MLB's final proposal. There's going to be no deal on the new collective bargaining agreement. That announcement just made here a little bit ago. The deadline was 4 o'clock Central. We're 20 minutes past that. MLB is threatened, and I think Rob Manfred's moving forward as canceling the first 2 series of the season. So Major League Baseball not getting out of their own way. Rob Manfred, of course, saying the concerns of our fans are very top of our consideration list. We'll talk more with Mitch Sherman in spring football next. Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio listen?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. More on Alexis Markowski's Freshman of the Year award. Steve Marik on the way with Hail Varsity next hour. Mitch Sherman joins us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Plenty of spring football to get into. But, Mitch, you and I both, for years, have grown up going to the ballpark with our childhood and into our adult years. And we've made it a point to take our kids to baseball. And right now, baseball not cooperating as the lockout is very real. I know Manfred's speaking now, but as a baseball fan and guy who loves taking his kids to the ball games over the years, what's your reaction?
I would say that Manfred is not speaking to me because I'm not listening. I don't want to hear much about what the owners have to say or the commissioner has to say, really even what the players have to say, although I think they're far less in the wrong here. Until they're ready to announce that they're going to get back on the field. And even then, I suppose you can say it's a hollow threat, but I'm not real thrilled just about baseball in general. But I'll go support the college game in the interim and some AAA baseball here in Sarpy County.
Mitch Sherman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. You have Manfred saying the last 5 years have been very difficult for the league from a revenue perspective. You've got owners that are, right, because MLB's only totaled $43 billion over that 5-year window. I mean, you've got a bunch of rich dudes in Major League Baseball, Mitch, but it's always been just a horrible arm wrestling match between the owners and players.
Yeah, and they just went through a stoppage that was ridiculous during the pandemic 2 years ago, when really everyone was sitting at home ready to watch anything on TV, and baseball dropped the ball, so to speak, in that moment. They got it together and played some games, but it was far less than what they should have. And here we are 2 years later. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And for those of us who have been fans of the sport for decades, I just to be honest, they're probably not going to lose us when baseball comes back. I would imagine I'm going to be there and want to watch. Just kind of wired that way, but that doesn't solve their problem because they're not winning over anybody, and they're not making things work with the younger demographic that they need to get to grow the sport.
The younger demographic is ripe to regenerate a demo for him. I mean, I don't know a family that doesn't have a kid in travel softball or baseball. They grow up really liking it. Junior wants to go see the Yankees. I mean, that's just kind of how our family works, but we've all experienced it. So they like going to the ballpark. They like playing it. And, I
don't know that that's really the case nationally in comparison to what it was a generation ago or 2 generations ago. I think people are soured on the sport in large part because of the greed that they see playing out with in situations like this. So there's still some young people there's a lot of young people who play the game, but I think there's fewer and fewer and fewer, and moments like what we're seeing chop that number down even more, who feel the need and have the desire, prioritize going and supporting the game at the major league level.
Mitch, we'll go to football here. Quite a bit of roundtable action yesterday with Coach Frost and his assistants, and your column with The Athletic. A new look, Huskers spring practice, fresh ideas rule. I enjoyed listening to Mickey Joseph. I spent a lot of time around Coach Applewhite and also Coach Bush. But, what do you think Mickey's going to be able to do with that receiver room, specifically a couple of guys on the consistency front when it comes to Betts and Manning?
Yeah, and Alante Brown in that group too, because his name was thrown around as much or more than any receiver yesterday during the conversations that Scott Frost had with the media and that the offensive staff, and even Bush. Bush talked about Alante Brown as a guy who's going to be a major factor on special teams. But I think you mentioned Manning and Betts, and I think Trey Palmer in that group, and then probably Oliver Martin, and you're looking for somebody else with Alante Brown. Maybe it's Isaiah Castaneda-Garcia, the transfer, who can fill into a role there. Or maybe you bring up one of your redshirt freshmen who sat last year. I know there were a lot of high hopes with Latrell Neville, Sean Hardy, Camonte Grimes when those guys signed a year ago. Or you have a couple incoming players, but as far as incoming freshmen who will be here Victor Jones is here now, and then a couple more who will be here in the summer. So there's a lot of bodies there at the wide receiver spot, and I think the thing that Mickey Joseph immediately brings is an ability to connect with those guys on a different level than what they've had in the past. Matt Lubick was coordinating the offense. He was involved with the quarterbacks. He was involved with the game plan in a different way than how this coaching staff breaks it down. And then that's just Mickey's strength. A lot more, I would say, than Lubick is being someone that they immediately feel comfortable with, that they're immediately drawn to. Everyone's immediately drawn to Mickey. I'm drawn to Mickey. I mean, you meet the guy, and you just want to spend time around him. He's got a unique personality, just a way to be able to engage with people that is rare, engage and make them feel good being around him. That's definitely true with his players. It was at LSU, and it's immediately, I think, moving in that direction, working that way at Nebraska, with guys like Xavier Betts and Alante Brown for sure, but I think that will spread to the entire group of wide receivers before those guys are on the field playing a game in August.
Mitch Sherman's with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, do you think there was a portion of the team that, I don't want to say lost their love of the game, but the last year's season beat them down quite a bit, so close but never getting over the finish line with all those close losses? Do you think there was some sit down and let's talk about it, and some confidence boosting that needed to go on with this new staff, with some new position group coaches?
Well, the messages that I've heard from the new position coaches and even the returning position coaches on the defensive side and with Sean Beckton are that they're not really dealing with 2021. And I don't know if that's the right way. It's the way that they've chosen to do it. They're not sitting down necessarily. There may be some individual conversations as the offseason goes on. And this time over these next 30-some days as they practice is the first opportunity for these guys to get really close in a football setting. Yeah, they can go into the office and talk and they can talk about workouts and game plans and watch film, but this is when they're really down and dirty together. So I think the relationships are going to grow, and maybe there will be some conversations about confidence lost or, building more of a winning culture and how it relates back to 2021. But I think for the most part, they've decided to flush it. And you heard that with Bill Bush. They buried the ball. Are the words that he used. And, with Donovan Raiola, he's not watching tape, or at least he says he's not watching tape of 2021. He doesn't want to see that stuff because it doesn't matter for him as he builds an offensive line in 2022. So I think for the most part, it's move on and get past it. But yeah, I do think it's impossible to believe that everyone who went through that is just in a great place right now mentally when it comes to football. When you've lost in that way repeatedly, and not just last year, but if they've been at Nebraska multiple years, it's happened for the entirety of their careers. It does leave some scars, and the only way I think that you can get past it is to win those games that didn't go your way, and the opportunity for that doesn't come until August and September.
Well, Mitch, you mentioned how the coaching staff doesn't want to talk about 2021, and Mark Whipple went on to say that there was a lot of positive feelings in the first day of spring ball. What are your thoughts on him through the roundtable media day and through the early stages of spring camp? What do you expect to see out of him and this offense, and how do you think he's going to turn it around here at Nebraska?
Well, he brings a different vibe. The first day of spring is always an upbeat day, always a positive day. No matter how the year went before that. I mean, it's just kind of like hope springs eternal, and there's a lot of optimism this time of year. So that's not surprising. But with Whipple in particular, yeah, he brings a different vibe, a different feel. I mean, I couldn't have imagined in years past that Mario, I'm thinking of the player, not the coach, that Mario Verduzco or Matt Lubick would have, or Troy Walters before Lubick would have been the one making an announcement about the quarterback who took the first rep at practice, and it generated headlines locally and nationally that probably aren't entirely accurate. I mean, there's a suggestion that Casey Thompson has won the job, which was not the message that Mark Whipple put out to the media yesterday. He said he took the first snap, and because he's the best guy right now, but that could change as this first week goes on. So nothing is decided. But to me, that's a different spot that Mark Whipple is in what Scott Frost is allowing him to do. Frost is still the head coach. It still stops. The buck stops with him. He's making the final calls. So I don't think Mark Whipple went out and did that on his own. Just acted independently and made a proclamation about Casey Thompson's spot on the depth chart without the head coach being okay with it. And I just don't think I don't think that's the makeup that the staff has had in the past before Whipple got here. So we'll see. We'll see how that continues on through the spring and into the summer and the fall. Maybe Whipple, is getting his first dose of what it's like in the Nebraska Fishbowl when he, sat back and saw some of the reaction to that one thing that he said, and perhaps he was taken aback by it, or maybe not. This guy's been through 4 decades of coaching. I think he's seen just about every environment. It's hard to imagine that a lot would surprise him at this point. I got to think he knew what he was saying, and that it would be received in a way that, where a lot of people have thought, okay, it's Casey Thompson's team now, which, again, was not the message that he intended to convey.
Mitch, good stuff. Thanks for spending some time on football and MLB with us today. I always appreciate your thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Good to talk to you.
Hello, listener. This is Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Mitch Sherman for joining us from The Athletic. That'll be posted on ESPN Lincoln on demand, ESPNLincoln.com, and some SoundCloud from Mitch coming up later. In hour 2, Rick Kaczenski will talk spring development, getting a pass rusher. Also, some of Kaz's thoughts on those edge rushers that you saw too often screaming off the edge to sack Nebraska quarterbacks. A slew of Big Ten personnel that are projected first-rounders. Kaz's take on some of those guys. Steve Marik also in hour 2 on Husker women's basketball. And a really good story he wrote. He caught up with a couple of NFL scouts as combine time is nearing for some of the Huskers trying to make a splash this 2022 draft. Open phones here till 5-466-377-6800, 825-5865. Last couple of thoughts here from Mickey Joseph when it comes to 2 names. We asked Mitch about them. Xavier Betts, Omar Manning, guys that flashed, guys that have the talent to be difference makers, but they need the consistency to do that. Mickey Joseph spent time yesterday talking about Betts' growth from what he's seen so far.
Matured a lot, and Xavier was an immature kid, when I first got here. But now he's grown up. He's starting to ask questions. He's starting to, just understand why he's here at Nebraska. And sometimes being from Nebraska, playing here, and being an in-state kid, it's a whole bunch of pressure. There's a whole bunch of pressure. And I want to just tell him all the time, like, hey, you just got to be Xavier. You just got to play ball. Don't worry about that. I'll take everything else off you. But it's not easy. It's not easy. It's just like a kid from Louisiana playing in-state football. It's not easy for a kid from Nebraska because everybody want to know why you're not playing, when you're going to do this, and they're pulling at you. Out-of-state kid, they're not getting pulled at. Xavier's getting pulled all over because he's an in-state kid. He was a great football player in high school, and people wanted to be a great football player right away. And he is, and he will. And his best football is ahead of him. But I'm happy where he's at right now, and I think he's doing a great job.
More on that Betts upside from Mickey Joseph.
Well, I think this kid, he's a big, fast kid that just can run, and he can get in and out of his breaks, and he's got great hands. So that's what you want at the X position. You want a big kid that can run. And we're going to do a little different. We're going to keep him at X. We're going to keep him at X, so he's going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage. So he gets a lot of one-on-one coverage, then we're going to let him loose.
Mickey, again, asked about the pressure that Betts was facing or more so feeling during his time at Nebraska?
Just look at the film from last year. That he'll show up 1 week he don't show up 1 week. So now my goal with him is this kid, which is to get him consistent, that he shows up every week. And he's going to give you 100% every week, and he's got to believe in himself. And it's about me shooting confidence to him. Just shooting him confidence like, hey, you can get this done, you can do it.
Impressions with Omar Manning. Omar and Trey Palmer both going to be competing in that slot spot.
No, Omar's excellent. He's an excellent receiver. He's a big target. He's a big kid that can run. And I was more with a smaller kid in the slot, But when Whip came, Whip said, hey, put Omar in the slot, and he's going to be able to do it. And I was like, because he wants a big target. So Omar embraced that because he's been outside. So he embraced that going inside. So now, he and Trey Palmer, they can play off each other. You play off each other, then you go with Brody, you got Isaiah also, but Omar's a big target going across the middle, and he's strong and he's fast, and he gets there in a hurry, and he has really good hands also. Competition within the room.
So that is one thing that you look at Omar's track record and ability, and then his inconsistency, and if I'm Omar, and granted, I don't know why or how the depths of the off-the-field stuff that affected him, I don't know the root of it. I know that he had hinted at some mental health stuff, and that's what some of the coaches talked about. But now he's got a guy that'll listen and communicate. That's who Mickey Joseph is to me, a guy that is going to counsel you but also coach the heck out of you. Connection-wise, there seems to early on be trust there. But now you also have Trey Palmer. So there's legit competition to take your job. So it's going to push you to either be better or you go away. And maybe that's the thing that Omar responds to. With Betts, a final thought on Betts here from Mickey Joseph when it comes to where Xavier matured. What part of his life specifically off field?
Off the field, because like I said, you got so much pressure. You got pressure off the field. He had to learn how to put that wall up. He's got to learn how to say no. I can't do it. I got to go do this. And he's doing that, and I'm helping him with it. And I think he's done a really good job.
There's a high number of kids that come in from in-state that have performed and played well, right? I think of the Steinkuhler boys who really did well in Lincoln. I think of Eric Crouch. I think of Amon Green. I think of a guy that is Cam Jurgens. Recruited at age 15 and then made the position switch. It just doesn't dawn on you as much as it should, just the amount of pressure that the in-state kids put on themselves. And with Betts, that's the transition, going from being an incredible player in-state to doing it on Saturdays for your home state school. And easier said than done, and trying to live up to this reputation, right? And it could wear and tear on some people. Husker basketball, how we feeling, Connor, for 2 in a row? At 22nd ranked Ohio State, the Buckeyes, I think they're in, but where are they going to be? Are they an 8 or a 9 seed? They've drifted a bit from that 4 to 5 line about a month ago. What do you feel? Can Nebraska at least replicate that execution from a rhythm standpoint, where they made the extra pass and guys had open shots to drill threes?
Well, I don't know if I feel necessarily super confident about the game tonight, because a lot of the time when you're a team that's not that great and you get a win like they did against Penn State, you tend to kind of roll over in that next game. But I don't know, Fred Hoiberg, it seemed like he was pretty pumped up after their win against Penn State, and it seems like the guys were as well. As far as Ohio State, when it comes to March Madness, I think they're probably going to be around a 6 seed just because they're a ranked Big Ten team. But I'm with you. I don't know if Ohio State is really all that. I think they could be an early exit come March, but that's for the field of 68 to decide, really. But I don't know if Nebraska comes out and wins this game, but I think they certainly put out a good fight on the road because season's coming to a close, almost Big Ten tournament time. It's time to go do this thing.
-15, my friend. That is the the line. Does Nebraska get you the dreaded cover? Do they cover the 15? And what type of game does McGowan's have? Does Bryce try and do too much going against Branham for that vaunted Freshman of the Year trophy? We'll wind down hour one next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down this first hour, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Connor Clark. Give us a find on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at ESPN Lincoln, at Hail Varsity, and at C_Clark_27. That's all I got for you for underscores there. But a reminder to get buckled up here. Coaches make substitutions during the game to get the best player on the field. Getting behind the wheel after drinking also demands a substitution. Sober drivers are the only choice. A DUI costs more than you think. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Connor, your amateur crop report says what to you about Big Ten? Are we talking 8 get in? I think Rutgers, their schedule down the stretch can allow them to for sure make it. Could also play their way out. I think Michigan's in trouble as well.
Yeah, I think Michigan ends up missing the tournament. That's just me.
Were you ever worried about Sparty?
No, I'm not worried about Sparty at all. Rutgers, I think, will end up on the right side of the bubble. I think as of right now, this morning, they were a 12 seed, according to Joe Lunardi. But I think the Big Ten ends up with 8. Indiana is a team I have a question about as well. I don't know if they make it in, so we could go down to 7. But I think if 2 teams are going to miss it out of those 9, it will be Michigan and Indiana. I think Michigan State will be fine. Obviously, you got a big one tonight between Purdue and Wisconsin. That's essentially for the Big Ten regular season title. You have a great team in Illinois. You have Iowa, who's playing their best ball all year. So I think the Big Ten will be just fine. 7 to 9 teams is the range. I think Michigan ends up missing out. I think Indiana has to win out. If they lose close to Purdue, I think that's fine. But if they do lose to Purdue, I think they have to win at least a game in the Big Ten tournament. Plus, it's in Indy, so you should, because Hoosier Faithful is going to show out there. So if you're Indiana, you got to finish really, really strong if you want to feel good about your chances on Selection Sunday.
You ever get to a Big Ten tournament?
I have. I got to the one in 2019, so the year before all the COVID stuff hit. And let me tell you, it is a great time. A very, very good time.
We went to the Big 8 tournament that was down in Kemper, and it was, I think, the 92 team. Nebraska ended up being in that 4-5 matchup against Kansas State. So it was the god-awful 8, make that 10:55 a.m. tip to start the day. And it was just a rock fight game. Nebraska got beat on a last-second buzzer, offensive rebound, K-State, and it just sucked. The cool part was seeing some of the guys in the hotel room, and it was pure Danny Nee magic, where it's between Nebraska and Oklahoma to get that final spot heading into the Big 8 tournament, so you don't have to do too much. K-State, I think, made it that year. I think Dana Altman might have been coaching, actually, K-State at that time. Either that or Lon Kruger, one of the two. So long and short, Nebraska beats Oklahoma on a Sunday Phillips 66 Raycom special, right? And then Danny Nee's throwing beers with everybody and anybody at Barry's afterwards, like old school Barry's. And Dad took us down there, had a beer with Danny, not me. Dad did. I was only 14 at the time. And then all of a sudden, hey, we're going to Kemper. He just pretty much said, how many seats you want? And Danny was the best. It was a great memory. It was a tough Big 8 tournament, and then Pikowski goes off for 35, I think, against UConn in a tough beatdown. That 8-9 matchup. Rick Kaczenski's on the way, hour 2 with Hail Varsity. Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt. with Hail Varsity. And I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. It's a Tuesday with Kaz. Rick Kaczenski with us. And Kaz, hope you're all right, brother. Gearing up for spring ball. What do you know?
Not a whole lot, brother. Same thing. So our spring ball is volleyball and travel baseball. So not many weekends to relax here. Till about July, it looks like, looking at the calendar. But got good weather. Supposed to be in the 80s here all week and all weekend. So we'll pack a cooler and I'll put it in a cup that doesn't look like there's vodka or beer in it. So yeah, we'll have a good time. But that's about what we got, man. How about yourself?
Well, baseball tryouts are going for junior. We have gone the baseball route and got some of Joe Boo's rum and sacrificed a live chicken. That way we get a little help from the baseball peeps. But now we're in the thick of baseball tryouts anyway for high school. So hoping the hard work pays off and his mother's athleticism shows through. But yeah, make sure you get enough ice in that Yeti cup, Kaz. That's all I'm saying. Well,
there you go.
Spring ball's here, man, and I'm interested. Your time at Iowa and in Lincoln, when it came to spring session, just the work and the time that it took for you and the kids to really work on and develop that pass rush. I look at Nebraska's line, and they're going to have to reload a little bit. It's not completely new, but it'll be newer for some guys with roles, okay? And, just get your expertise on making that jump on pass rush so it can be a weapon again for Nebraska, because it's been missing on defense for quite a while, consistently.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, I was very fortunate to work for two guys that understood the importance of individual time with coaches on the field. So, Kirk being a Joe Moore guy, and Coach Moore would always tell the stories of at the end of the year we do Coach Holtz would ask for these critiques, what you needed and all those things. And Joe would hand in a piece of loose leaf paper, and he'd just put more individual. You can never get enough individual. And that was Kirk's mentor. And, Bo came from that same type of school of, you need to hone in your skills. It's not something that you just flip on a switch. And so spring ball was great for those things. But really what we did in spring ball was just take live reps of the things that they were doing in the weight room with the coaches in there, and the things that we were doing during the skills and drills period out of pads. But, I think the most important element of development is the actual time the head coach gives the individual coaches time to master, to allow those kids to master their craft. And I never had to worry about that. And I think when you do that, you better be efficient. You better know what the hell you're talking about. And it's a progression. You just don't go out there and get in a 3-point stance with your tail in the air and take off, right? It's about eyes, right? the first most important thing. The eyes are a muscle. You got to train your eyes. What's their target? What are they looking at? This tackle, this guard, what's the first thing that moves? Is it the knee? Is it the shoulder? So it's those type of things that you can really work on and specialize with each individual kid against each individual player. It's about angles. It's that first step, false movement, loading all that weight up on that front foot. So the only way you can move, it's forward, right? And, we're talking about when we absolutely know that it's passing down. So I think those are the key elements of it, is just having the time, being efficient with your time, and then being a good teacher of what you're trying to stress. Everybody teaches things differently, right? But we're all trying to get home. And it's the things that you say, it's the things that register to each player. I might be teaching the same thing to Randy Gregory and Vincent Valentine, and I have the same expectations for them, but Randy may get something that Vincent doesn't. So we're teaching the same exact thing, but I might have to use a little bit different terminology, or I might have to, adjust Vincent or Randy in a different way to get what we want. So it's an intricate process, but like everything else, it's reps, 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 reps.
Rick Kaczenski's with us at Tuesday with Kaz, Spring Football Thoughts, Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, is there a kid that you worked with that you're going to keep with you from a proudness standpoint, that made a real jump, a kid that really started off maybe slow, and then, man, by the time he was done playing ball, all those talents came out? Is there a success story in your memory bank?
Oh, there's several. I mean, there's several, but Schmidt, as a coach, when you look back on the things, I think if you're a successful coach, and if you're in it for the right reasons, what you're always looking at is what you left on the table, what else you could have did. You do that daily, you do that weekly, you do that after games. But man, that would be to just point out one guy, single out one guy, man, that would be a discredit to many great players that I had the opportunity to coach. But you take a guy like Mike Daniels at Iowa. I think when you look at his recruitment, and then just how he, I used to kick him off the field daily. Like it just got to the point where he would take a bad rep. I wouldn't even have to see. He'd just start bolting, right? But there's several guys like that. But I think when I look at the guys that I was fortunate to coach at Nebraska, like a guy like Baker Steinkuhler, he became such a force at the end of 2012, the last quarter of 2012, there wasn't a better, in my opinion. He was probably top 3 all-around football players on the defensive side of the ball in the Big Ten. Cam, what we asked Cam to do, move to inside at, he was playing at about 245 pounds. And then just the strides that Eric Martin played defensive end the year before, outside backer. And then, just some things that we changed in the defense, and just some things that him and I talked about that, man, give me 4 of those dudes right there, and I'll be one of the best coaches that ever come through there. And I was fortunate to have those guys, man, but when you talk about guys you're proud of or that just got better, Baker's one of my all-time favorite players, and he's just an absolute stud. And I don't think he gets the credit. I only had a chance to coach him for a year, but from spring ball to fall camp to the end of the season, how great of a football player that guy became. And you want to talk about missing him in the Big Ten championship game, that killed us. I know one player doesn't make, but that player made a huge, huge, huge difference on our defense. But I can go down the line. Jack Gangwish was a walk-on that, literally there was a time, and I can tell this story. Because Jack and I laugh about it. And Bo, we were playing Illinois, and Jack was out there because Randy had like 2 missed assignments in a row. So JP was upset. Said, "Hey, get him out. He doesn't know what he's doing, and we're about to call some pressure." So we put Jack in the game, and Bo looks up and calls a pressure, and he's like, "Why is Ganish in there?" And he's like, "Call a timeout." And I'm like, "He's good." He's like, so Bo and I are on the sideline. He was going to call a timeout, and he's like, "We're better off with 10 than having him in there." Wow. No, but that's the stuff that, he was saying facetiously, but we called the timeout, didn't get Randy back in there. But Jack became, Jack, you look what he did. He stepped in when Randy got hurt in 2014, and how he played against Iowa, against Brandon Sheriff. And Jack was just a dude that just worked, man. I mean, he just worked his tail off. But there's so many stories like that. I mean, like Joe Keels is a kid that didn't play much, had a lot going on in his family. His father was killed. He had a brother that got there was so much stuff going on, and here's a guy that had all these high expectations that just came to work every single day. And then what Joe became for me, Joe's a guy that understood coaching. He understood what I was trying to teach. Joe became a mentor in the room. Joe became a guy that helped me coach, in 2014. So, there's Malik. You just name it, Schmitty. And that's the great thing about when you coach at a Big Ten school, especially with the reputation Iowa and Nebraska, you get good coaches, you get good players to coach, right? You give me a bad player and I might be able to make him okay. And that's about it, But at those 2 places, I was fortunate. It's easy to recruit defensive players because of the reputation you have. So, but man, I could go on and on about the players. But as a coach, I'm always looking at, dang man, what is this guy? Could I made this guy a little bit better? Could I did this? Could I, because you're constantly learning, you're constantly evolving, and to be honest with you, the more I'm away from football, the more, when you step back, you learn a lot. And, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look, with me being out so long now, man, I've learned a lot of football just kind of stepping away from it. So, and got to meet with a lot of different guys and got to meet a lot of different coaches that teach things certain ways that that clicked for me that I wish I knew back then that I could teach those kids. But nah, man, you gotta have good players make you a good coach, brother.
Rick Kaczenski's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Kaz, what a talk NFL draft combine coming up here, and what to get your take here. I'll give you the names because I know you've watched them, and you lock in on the Big Ten. You also keep an eye on the ACC, obviously, and in your backyard, but you look at a kid like Carl Loftus from Purdue, pretty high first-round projection. Boy Mafe, just a specimen from Minnesota. A big reason some of those Gopher defenses were pretty decent. And then the two animals from Michigan that were so good, Jabo and Hutchinson. I know that Hutch is projected pretty high, and Ajabo also I've seen in the teens, but all 4 are first-round projections. Is there one of those names that kind of piqued your interest that, man, you maybe were a fan of, or you think, okay, this kid can really do some special things at the next level?
Well, I think all 4 of those guys are pretty unique in their different skill set. If I'm an NFL guy right now, just the way the league is, I'm drafting and looking at more of the hybrid guys just because it's become such a passing league. It's almost like Canadian football now. People run on first down, and then, you're throwing second, third down. So I'm looking for those guys that don't have to come off the field on third down or in those passing situations. So, I like Hutchinson, but can he play in space? I'm not saying he can't. You just haven't seen that. I love his motor. I think when you categorize those guys, you got Karlaftis and Hutchinson kind of as those 3 three down guys, but they're going to play with their hand in the ground. You know, if they're going to have their hand up, I think you're going to see them in fire zones, you know, drop into a zone or something like that. But I can't see them playing in space a whole lot. Now, as a coach, if I'm recruiting, give me those two guys all day, just because of everything that they bring to the table. Love their attitude, love their motor. I mean, so if I'm picking even between those two guys, I love Karlaftis. I love him. Now, can you, as a personnel guy, and go to the owners and say, I'm going to take those two guys as their motors? No. So I think, you know, the kid from Minnesota and the other defensive end from Michigan, what makes them so attractive is just their ability probably to play in space, to be three down guys, not only with their hand in the ground, but also playing in the alley and being a little bit more diverse. And, you know, when you're talking NFL teams and when you're talking personnel, people are always looking for that cap money. So what I like about all four of these guys, you know, they're going to be picked into a system. You know, Karlaftis and Hutchinson aren't going to be picked into a system where they ask guys to play in the alley or play in space. So what you're going to see is those guys playing three downs. And when you can draft guys to play all three downs, that's going to give you a little bit more cap room to go get somebody else that can help your football team. And then vice versa with the other two hybrid type guys. I think, you know, they're going to be picked in a system that does what those guys have done on the college level. So I think it's very impressive. I think it says a lot about the Big Ten. It says a lot about, you know, how those schools are recruiting. But I think also it tells you about who they're going against.
Stuff from Kaz on Hail Varsity Radio. A few more minutes with Rick Kaczenski. We'll talk about that mindset, like or loving football. Steve Marik also on the way with Hail Varsity this hour.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back.
Fellas, you think we could listen to the radio lesson?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Back with you, Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. More with our Tuesdays with Kaz, Rick Kaczenski, talking NFL projections for some of the Big Ten linemen. And also the topic of like versus loving football, getting that out of a kid and today's high school athlete and translating that into a high-level college player. Steve Marik also coming up here next segment.
When you break down the Big Ten and the offensive line, who has better offensive lines, who's got more offensive linemen in the NFL than the Big Ten? So, I mean, these guys, obviously the NFL is the NFL. It's the best of the best. It's always going to be a step faster. But, you know, what you see on tape is pretty predictable what you're going to get on the next level. And Schmidt, I mean, you'd have to go back a long, long time. When you look at these draft picks, there's not many bust defensive ends coming out of the Big Ten. There's not many bust defensive tackles. You know, some guys have a little bit better careers, but there aren't guys that just, you know, had a cup of coffee in the league. So I think that says a lot about the line play in this league. But it's pretty impressive that you got four guys. I wouldn't be shocked if all four of those guys are taken in the first 18 to 22 picks.
That's kind of the range. And, there's a lot of Big Ten love in the first round this year on the lines of scrimmage. Rick Kaczenski. Kaz will wrap with this, and was listening to Mickey Joseph yesterday. We had the spring press conference and media session, and Mickey was talking about that mentality, getting guys who like football or are good at football to really love football. And there's been some guys, this winter conditioning that he was talking about, and there's been some other guys that have really had to grow up, and that's just part of, you know, the college experience. Was that a challenge for you in college to get guys that you knew were good. They knew they were good, but to really kind of kick it into gear and do everything extra to do that love part when it came to playing the game.
I don't mean to sound like old Jock Jablonski here from 1962, but I mean, it's completely different now. The kid who, in my opinion, that can't live without football, that just lives and breathes it. I mean, literally, the thought of not having it in your life is almost frightening. I think those guys are unicorns now. And when I was growing up and when I was playing and when I first started coaching, the majority of players were like that. And then you had a few guys that you tried to bring along that you hoped the light bulb would go on for it. But you had a majority that, those guys, you had so much peer pressure that either those guys left on their own or they joined the party, man. And, I tell you, the high school coach at Cathedral Prep where I went, he just announced his retirement yesterday after 23 years, 5 state titles. 16 PIAA, and one of the most successful high school coaches in the history of Pennsylvania. And him and I had a talk, and he's just like, it's just different, man. He goes, I can't get the kids to do what I want them to do. He goes, if I'm not in the weight room, guess what? They don't show up. And he goes, 5, 8, 10, 20 years, it wasn't like that. He goes, you had guys calling you to open the weight room up. And he goes, it's just really, really changed. And I think, I don't want to blame recruiting, social media, all that stuff. I mean, so much praise is giving to these kids before they really accomplish anything, right? And that's really hard. But I think too, football. You remember Monday Night Football growing up? There was so much it was an event, man. Now there's football on every day. There's so much stuff going on. I mean, gosh, it's just like baseball. I mean, I grew up loving baseball. You watch the game of the week, man, and you watch This Week in Baseball. I mean, that was religion for me. And now there's just so much going on. You got, live streaming. You got DVR. You got, you watch games on your phone. You got so much stuff going on nowadays. I just don't think the game has that much. I don't want to discredit the players of now, sure, but it was a lot easier motivating kids then, in my opinion, than it is now. And then with all the changes now, all the cameras around, and I mean, kids aren't challenged. I mean, let's be. There's not a whole lot of adversity. Life's pretty dang good. This isn't Ukraine. I promise you that. Life's pretty dang good in this country, and there isn't a whole lot of adversity for kids. And there wasn't a whole lot of adversity when I was growing up, but it was created by coaches. They created it. They created it in the off season, right? They created it at practice. They put pressure on you. Now you put pressure on a kid, he's bad-mouthing you. You get bashed on, by Joe from Broken Bow 22 that heard from his third cousin that dated, the backup center that, this coach is a jerk. So, man, let's fire that guy because this kid's leaving now, and that's kind of where you're at, unfortunately. And now you got NIL and all those other things, but man, there's just so many other things out there. And it just seemed like before, not to sound, I know I sound like an old fogey, but hey, man, this is me talking, man. I mean, hey, let me tell you, there was no transferring in me unless I was told to transfer. Mm-hmm. That's how, because if I left on my own, there was nowhere to go except, probably the Marine Corps. I wasn't going back to Erie because I didn't have a place to live. I can promise you that. And that's just the change in the mentality. Mentally, it's just a different world we're living in. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just different. I just think, I know I probably sound like Herb Street a little bit. I just think that the exposure and what football meant and how we put these guys on a pedestal, and how it was an event with pageantry and just the whole presentation of it. Man, football, those guys didn't even seem like they were human beings to me growing up. But hey, different world, right? Mm-hmm. You have access to these guys now. They're on social media. They're not, you look at athletes nowadays, and they're not much different than us, right? And I think that's kind of probably a little bit different than when you and I were growing up or some of these older guys growing up. But I just think that, I think just because of the way recruiting is, just because of social media, just because of NIL, there's so much involved with it. I don't want to say that, hey, kids don't love it. I don't think they know any better, right?
Sure.
Just like we didn't know any better than what our parents knew. Yeah, I mean, it's just what they know, but what they know, I don't think they love the game, Schmitty.
Gotcha.
Right? I just think that it's just, hey, man, football is this is part of my life. It's an important thing, but I got, but man, it was frightening. I mean, football was our life. And if football is, it's really, really hard. There's nothing easy, especially about college football on this level. So, if you don't love it, man, it's going to be really hard for you. It's going to be really hard for you to be enthused. It's going to be really hard for you, to stick with it. And the great thing about football, it's you can't hide, man. You might hide for a little bit, but it is the great exposure. I used to tell my guys that all the time. There is nothing easier in life than to expose an individual than film on the football field, so in interaction with your teammates in the locker room. So, like I said, I'm not bashing players now. It was just a different time. And I think these players think they love the game. It was just a little bit different then. Just like, hey, put on a highlight film from the 80s and, put on Jack Tatum, put it Steve Atwater, Ronnie Lott. Those guys they'd be kicked out of every game. You wouldn't even know who they were because they wouldn't last. They'd be sitting out a half every single game, So it's just I think it's a different time. It's a different game. And I just think there's so many distractions, it's just making a little bit harder for coaches, in my opinion, to get guys motivated.
Rick Kaczenski, Kaz, great stuff. Awesome insight, bud. Thanks for your time and taking a few minutes to speak on this. Always love what you have to say, man.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Good stuff from Kaz, a Tuesday with Kaz, Hail Varsity Radio. Some perspective there, the like versus love dynamic. Good stuff from Mickey Joseph. We had that for you in hour one. Coming up, Steve Marik from Hail Varsity. Thoughts on Alexis Markowski and her hardware, Husker spring football. And a really good story from Steve with the NFL Combine looming and what some of the scouts say about JoJo. And Austin Allen and Cam Jurgen, some national headlines here, NFL news. Of course, the big news of the day, MLBPA rejecting Major League Baseball's offers. So lockout is a reality. The first two series canceled, spring training canceled, as the deadline came and went at 4 Central, 5 Eastern. And Mitch Sherman, God bless him, went off. He's a frustrated guy with baseball, like many of us. I don't live and die for baseball like I used to growing up. And 1994 kind of helped shape that. 1998 brought it back. And then once the truth came out about pincushions versus the suspicion, human pincushions for chicks digging the long ball. It was sad. Really, quite honestly, as a youth, I was a Cubs fan, and that just wore the hell out of me down. And then he finally had to just walk away. So Connor he doesn't have a tear going down his cheek, but he's nodding because he's from the Windy City.
Well, I saw a title, so I have nothing to complain about.
No, you have. You're right. I mean, you saw a really fun team. and Crazy Joe. I mean, before it was Murphy's.
Just try not to suck.
It was the Billy Goat Tavern, and let's go party in the outfield or at a rooftop. So the Packers, their GM, look, there's been no trade offers for Aaron Rodgers. Like what you hear, high-quality radio and podcast, just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, winding down to Tuesday, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Steve Marik with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Steve, what's going on? Thanks for the time.
Hey, Chris, thank you for having me. I'm just over here working inside while we got this, 7-degree weather outside right now?
You and me, man. I was trying to talk Connor into, staying inside. I was going to go do a parking lot show out in the sun, but Connor's like, dude, I'm leaving. No, if I got to be in here, you got to be in here. So
yeah,
a thought here. Alexis Markowski, incredible freshman season. We know how just amazing she was in high school, but what a year for her. What a job by staff, and also Alexis, of course, with her work ethic and her family to really make this splash so soon in the Big Ten. Are you surprised?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, she had the pedigree to be doing what she's doing, especially with coming from the family that she does with her dad and mom. But, to be honest with you, I don't think a lot of people saw Alexis having this much success right away in her college career. Of course, two-time state champ over there at Lincoln Pius, a couple Class A state championships there with the Thunderbolts. But, there was just a lot of kind of wondering and questioning going on of, was she just, bigger than everybody else? And is that going to be, what we're going to see? Is that going to change against Big Ten caliber players? And, I think she kind of proved a lot of people wrong. I wrote a story on it last month and talked to her high school coach and her dad about just the other people's, I guess, just questions and doubts that they had with her. But, she put in the work, she put in the time, she focused on basketball after being a multi-sport athlete over there at Pius. And once she did that, I think she started, working on her game a lot more. And now she's seeing everything pay off, and it's been really fun to watch. She's been an incredible key to the big piece of this basketball team that Amy Williams has built, and it's been really impressive to watch.
Steve, now over to football here. There were a lot of roundtables yesterday for all the coaches to talk to the media. Spring football began yesterday, and Mark Whipple was one of those that was at the roundtables, obviously the new offensive coordinator for this Nebraska Cornhusker team. He talked a lot about film and how to customize film playlists for a lot of individual guys so they can learn throughout the summer and that time in between spring and summer camp. What do you think, how valuable is that film going to be for this team, and how do you think Mark Whipple can take this offense to another level?
Yeah, that's a great point with the film, because I thought that was a really interesting and like, oh yeah, of course, that would be like good to put everything on tape that you want these kids to learn, have them watch that every single day until they're coming back in the summer. And it's just, to put everything on tape and teach them and show them why they're going where they are, as, if the corner's playing like this, then you do this. If the safety's positioned over here, then you go over here. Mark Whipple is an incredibly smart guy after listening to him talk. He has so much, like 40 plus years of coaching experience. So he absolutely knows how to build an offense, how to draw up plays, how to, more importantly, teach the kids to do what he wants them to do. And the film piece of this is incredibly important to that as well. And with him in the fold right now, I just got a sense that, listening to Scott talk up at the podium, he was really kind of, talking about the whole team, not just the offense. He was able to go and talk with some of the younger guys and coach up some of the younger guys as the twos, as they call them, on the second team. And, I don't know if there was like a relief sense to him or just, if it was just the spring and everybody's kind of in a good mood, because they can be. But I don't know. It was just kind of like a very good vibe over there at Memorial Stadium on Monday with everybody talking. But, yeah, with Coach Whipple in the fold right now, I just think that this offense has the minds to do a lot of great things on offense. It's just going to be a matter of if they can install the offense and teach these kids what they want them to do in a quick manner, because that week 0 game with Northwestern's coming up.
Steve Marik's with us from Hale Varsity. Spring football thoughts over to Chins, and what'd you glean from Coach Chinander?
Yeah, it's not a lot of. I don't think a lot of people, like, obviously the Coach Whipple and Coach Mickey Joseph over there with the receivers, and Donovan Raiola is the new guy over there too. There's just a lot of new faces on the offensive side of the ball, and sometimes I think that the defensive side kind of gets overlooked, but they're missing a lot of pieces too. And I just thought it was very interesting to see how, with the players that Eric Chinander is losing, how that's gonna, I guess, impact the way he structures the defense, how he calls the defense, because there's not a JoJo Doman there anymore, and JoJo was a guy at that nickel outside linebacker that kind of erased a lot of problems for you. But now that he's gone, who is that going to be? And is the nickel going to be an important part to the defense, just like it was last year? I still think it is, but the way Eric was talking about it, it's just going to be whoever gets that nickel position. It's going to change the way the defense, what that kid is going to be asked to do, whether it's Isaac Gifford or maybe Javen Wright or maybe Chris Klarvik was the new name that popped up in there. Each of those guys has their traits that they're good at and what they're not good at. So whichever one is on the field, that's going to impact other areas of the defense. So that's what I was really interested in, kind of talking about that. He has a lot of questions to answer, and the D line depth is one of them too, and we talked about that at length as well.
Steve Marik's with us on Hale Varsity Radio. Steve, we'll wind down here, bud, and really awesome story you did on HaleVarsity.com when it comes to the next step for a handful of Huskers, specifically reaching out to some NFL minds when it comes to the NFL Combine. And you got a host of Huskers trying to make some money here this month here, either in Indy or at Pro Day.
Yeah, that was a really fun one to do, and I'm thankful that Kyle Krabs of the Draft Network was able to talk at length with me on those 4 dudes: Cam Taylor-Britt at corner, Austin Allen at tight end, Cam Jurgens at center, and then obviously JoJo Doman at linebacker. He's really, really high on JoJo. I think he said he's tailor-made for today's, the 2022 NFL modern-day football. Just a dynamic athlete over there at linebacker who can do a little running, do a little tackling, and he's, sturdy enough to hold up and run support, and quick enough that he could cover a slot guy for a little bit. And those are just, really kind of important players to kind of identify and develop once you get to the NFL, because, with the way offenses are going and has been going with, some of these passing concepts that everybody are getting really, really, really good at. Just look at what Kansas City is doing, LA Rams, having a defender like JoJo on the field to do multiple things. Those are going to be in need, and I think JoJo can really fill that need for a defense somewhere.
Steve Marik with us from Hale Varsity. Steve, we'll get caught up again. Thanks for a few minutes today, bud.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
A Hurrdat Media Production.